Corporate News.
You're still watching Business Today, and if you just joined us, we're in for the second segment, which is company news. And in this regard, we're going to be looking at CRT's engagement, where it hosted a number of people, including Bank of Uganda, URA, Financial Intelligence Authority, and of course, the parliamentary committee in charge of the financial committee. Now, so the CRT in Uganda is calling for a corroborated tax justice and other organizations to address the illicit financial flows and enhance domestic resource mobilization. This engagement with financial institutions such as, like I earlier mentioned, URA, FIA, and the Parliamentary Committee on Finance, and as well as Bank of Uganda, was meant to boost capacity in combating illicit financial flows and also advocate for a fair taxation. Despite existing policies, these efforts aim to track and curtail IFFs supporting Uganda's physical integrity. We do have recorded a clip that could give us a better insight as it's played. We're going to come back to the studios and we'll have an interaction with an expert on this.
UNCTAD report noted that we are losing about 88.6 billion annually. Now you can imagine how much Uganda loses. Approximately could be 30%, 20%. The figure can go on and on. But we believe that government has done a lot currently. However, there are still gaps, just like they've highlighted. And some of the gaps that they've really touched on are issues around working really together as entities, ensuring that the national identification number, once one goes to the bank, they're able to access even the face, because by using that gap. There are also issues around really tracking ensuring that the regulations, implementation is being done.
A lot, of course, needs to be done, especially in terms of research work, to try and estimate the exact amount of losses that each individual country suffers. Even Uganda itself needs to estimate.
And of course, like the engagement kind of shows us, there needs to be a deliberate effort from the financial institutions that are accountable for these illicit financial flows to be accountable. And then also the Parliamentary Committee pledged to be committed to issuing legislation and also budgets for these financial institutions to ensure that the existing policies are harmonized and, the tax justice is upscaled. But of course, with me is Mr. Robert Suna, an independent consultant in trade, tax and investment. Could you please introduce yourself more?
Thank you very much, Rona, for having me, and good evening, viewers. Like said, I'm Robert Suna. I'm an independent consultant on tax, trade and investment. Thank you so much
for joining us. Now, looking at the scanty data that is there to what we need to know in regards to Uganda's position in these illicit financial flows, and like Siatini just mentioned, Africa on an estimate is losing close to $88.6 billion to illicit financial flows, with a significant outflow compared to inflow. I would like to know from you, Robert, to the country's position as a potential investment ground, what should this curtail?
Yeah, I think Uganda is part of the global world. If you hear Africa losing about $88.6 billion to its financial flows, of course, it cascades down to the impact even equally in Uganda.
Yes.
You're having a continent that receives about 53 billion in terms of foreign direct investment, and then it receives 83 billion of overseas development assistance. What does that mean is that if these financial flows were curtailed, if we could not lose that amount of money, then we would be even able our own without borrowing. We have been quarreling about borrowing. When we have so much money going out of illicit financial flows, then the appetite for borrowing is inevitable, because we have to spend and deliver on the needed public services in the country. So that's the picture it paints. That said, if you compare the losses vis-a-vis our funding gap, I'm trying to talk about how much we need to finance our SDG Agenda 2030. We have an annual gap of about 200 billion US dollars. If we are losing 88 billion in terms of its financial flows,
Africa holistically,
it means like 45% of our funding gap could have been covered if we could reclaim our illicit financial flows, money lost due to illicit financial flows. Yeah, so in the Ugandan context, I think we need to observe what it means in terms of our revenue mobilization and what it tells in terms of our appetite for borrowing.
And what is the impact of these to, you know, Uganda's revenue mobilization?
Yes, you have an economy which is mobilizing, like for this year's budget, about 23 trillion expected to be raised, and then you're using part of it to pay external debts. You're already constrained in terms of domestic resource mobilization. You may be aware that almost every 100 shilling we collect in Uganda, 30% goes back to service the debt. Which debt is caused because of the inefficiency in the lack of available domestic resources, some of which could have been contributed to due to illicit financial flows. So you have an economy with a very low tax effort. Tax effort is about tax to GDP ratio. How much of the economic activities are contributing to the national coffers? If you have a country that has that low tax effort and is subjected to illicit financial flows, debt becomes inevitable. And then the cycle will continue because however much money you collect, you'll have to pay the debt. And if you don't close those loopholes through which money is being taken out of the country illegally, then it means you will continue in a deficit. Expenditure will be high, yet the revenue is not enough, so you have to borrow, continue borrowing there.
Now, could you speak to me at the vulnerable sectors we're speaking about? I would like to know where money laundering, corruption, tax evasion, illegal resource, you know, mining and the minerals, where do they fall? Where do they rank in regards to these IFFs?
I'll give you an example. I think as at the end of 2022, gold overtook coffee as our leading export. And when you ask Ugandans if they know how gold is mined and where it is mined and where it is sold, you may get disturbed.
So it's a conversation that is really
it's a conversation that can be mind-boggling. So extractives by their nature, because they are very variable, something small costs too much, they are vulnerable to illicit financial flows. Drug cartels are interested in them. Terrorists are interested in them. That's why you see most of the resource-rich nations globally and in Africa they never run out of wars. Because those who want to finance terrorism benefit from the resources, and they sell them to come and finance the wars. So they will continue wanting it to be unstable for as long as they continue looting the amount. So for Uganda's case, the extractive sector is very, very vulnerable. People are using the financial system to clean the money. That's why the Financial Intelligence Authority, their mandate is very critical in this, and the central bank. They tend what we call trade-based money laundering. They launder proceeds, they obtain money illegally, but when it comes to Uganda, they will invest in real estate. It appears as a very genuine sector. You see buildings mushrooming, and I've had this conversation with those who say, is it bad to have illegal money in the country if my people are getting employed, I'm constructing and I'm employing others, I'm having rents? It is bad to have illegal money in the economy. It may even finance takeover, a political capture, which we don't want.
Yes.
So do
you think this is happening because we are mostly a cash economy? This money cannot easily, be tracked due to the slow uptake of digitization?
That is one of it, but I also want to tell you that the people who run the money are wiser than ours. So the regulation may be there, but I want to tell you that it's a chain of individuals. So non-digitization or digitization may not be a major point. In fact, some forex bureaus perpetuate money laundering because we have thresholds as to how much amount of money should enter the country or should exit. But what these people will do, they will subdivide the money, or turn it into assets by cleaning it. So the financial system itself no matter how highly digitized it can be, they can use the digital systems themselves to round up the proceeds of crime. So I don't want to blame it on having a even more digitized economies are vulnerable to that, because the money launderers are wiser than the people who are implementing the regulations. So that's what happens. So the more you digitize, you require more sophisticated systems and individuals to handle. But the more sophisticated they get, even the bigger the volume of proceeds that they will round up. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The question of how big the burden is to public investment is a question it's not even a question. I think it is obvious because of, I mean, look at the index. And of course, I believe that we have not, found right data to amount to how much we are losing as a country. But I would like to know, what do you think is the role of FIA, Bank of Uganda, URA? Because in a conversation with them, and I wish the producer had played those insights prior, they said what we have noticed as us is because we are not working together. There's no harmonization of policies, and that is why there's no implementation. The finance committee that is meant to cater for the same is saying, yes, we're supposed to legislate and issue budgets, but we are not working together. There's no harmonization. So if the policies are there, they exist, then what's the challenge?
Yeah, I think it cuts across. Generally, our government and the country at large, the issue of collaboration is still lacking. Majority of these initiatives require what we call the whole of government approach, starting from revenue mobilization. If you have segmented agencies, each one is interested in their mandate, and they will deliver to their mandate. I want to give you an example of Australia, USA, South Africa, Singapore. They have financial intelligence units which can even go ahead and prosecute people who are involved in such crimes. Now, the one for Uganda, unfortunately, the mandate in policy-wise just makes it an agency that is supposed to gather information on suspicious transactions, share it with our legislature, or share it with the criminal investigation department and the judiciary to handle. The mandate itself is confining them to information gathering. So by the time they get CID on board, they get police on board, URA on board, judicial on board. I mean, how many cases are being handled by the judicial at this time? We have a backlog, we don't even have the capacity. By the time they wait for all that collaboration, cases will go unattended to. And when it comes to recovery of such proceeds, it will become a big challenge. So I understand the issue on collaboration, but as a country, we have not moved to that step. First of all, the mandates are very competitive in nature.
Yeah.
For instance, if I go to the Uganda Revenue Authority, when you ask them about awarding tax incentives, they will tell you, no, the Minister of Finance is the one who does that.
Yes.
And then the investment also gives the license, and it does not have the mandate to even monitoring if those people are adhering to the license they said. So if you have that division,
there's an internal problem of accountability.
Some of these, there must be deliberate effort for the whole of government to work together to be able to deliver on these mandates. Okay,
then if we're failing internally, then how about the international task force? Considering owing the fact that Uganda is still under the grey listed countries, how have we subscribed to the Financial Action Task Force owing to the fact to that exactly? Yeah,
by the mere nature that you're part of the global financial system and architecture, there are some things that you cannot avoid. Proceeds, illegal trade and the rest are part of the global. You trade, I mean, you can't avoid that. So by having what we call the Financial Action Task Force, on anti-money laundering and terrorist financing, Uganda is a member. It subscribes. They have a standard, and they have terms and conditions which we must meet to be able to show that you are committing to fighting money laundering and terrorism financing. So by grey listing, as they're trying to say, we are on the list of increased monitoring by that action force. In other words, we are having deficiencies within our anti-money laundering and terrorist financing architecture. So this is now where the importance of the Financial Intelligence Authority and the Finance and Foreign Affairs have to work together to make sure they address some of the deficiencies that were identified. They may be institutional, they may be practical on enforcement of those laws, There may be about collaboration and information sharing, among others. So that's what we need to think about when we talk about the international arrangement. But I want to tell you that for investment purposes, for the investors who are serious, who take countries serious, this can be a threat to the national investment, because investors have what we call certainty.
Maybe they will use it to their advantage.
No, that of course those are the ones that are irrational in nature. But any rational investor would have some environment that is certain about their investment. So whenever you go on the grey list, you are trying to show that you are being monitored by the international agencies regarding how you commit to money laundering and terrorist financing. No investor would love to be in an unstable economy. I think that's what Uganda has been enjoying over the years. When they say, now we see what has happened to the tourists in Kasese, it is a threat. So no one would want to go in an economy that there's economic instability, there is a threat to terrorism, there is a lack of sharing of information regarding, in terms of transparency of monies and how they are moving. Well, the laws in Uganda may allow for flight of money outside in terms of encouraging investment. You can allow even take 100% of what you've gotten, but legally taking it out, not illegally taking it out or bringing it in. So it is a threat to investment in that case. Now,
going forward, and of course now looking at because we really have a bigger, as you have just put it, it's a big, the magnitude of the problem cannot be explained. Now going forward and looking at the lessons that have learned, do you have any experience of where IFFs have been curbed and the economy has worked and has proceeded like it should, or what do you suggest? Because the current challenge is drawbacks. What defining lessons should we draw from other countries that have had the same?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the first one is the legal and institutional framework, which Uganda has tried to work on. I mean, Uganda just recently passed the automatic exchange of information bill. The Uganda Registration Services Bureau recently mandated people to declare their beneficial ownership status. Those are all good steps. There was a revision of the Companies Act and Partnerships Amendment Act of 2022 guarding the same, share the information to know the exact owners of the businesses. There are steps there. The URA administratively has improved their monitoring on the customs. They have electronic cargo tracking systems. They are working together with their neighbors to curtail illicit trade across borders. So there are works there, but where the gaps have been, and why I'm proud of this Automatic Exchange of Information Act that came into force is what we call reciprocity. I mean, reciprocity in the sense that when I ask for information from another jurisdiction or the country, it should be supplied. You get? Like if are
you optimistic about that being happening?
Yeah. I'm very optimistic because it has its own standards, and Uganda has been pursuing it, I think, for the last decade. I think we are mature now to be able to get that information. What it means that if I'm hosted in Dubai and I'm applying business in Uganda, and Dubai is a member of that sharing of information standard, I don't need to contact Dubai again to send information about that business. It will automatically flow with the URA, so they can know how I'm operating. Yes. So for me, it is a good procedure.
Of course, yeah, it's a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction. Then other countries that have succeeded in handling this again is to do with having enforceable, like the laws are there, but they are enforced. We have seen, for instance, Switzerland, which is a tax haven, confiscating properties of African leaders. I saw the son of the Equatorial Guinea president. They are confiscating his property. Others have offered amnesty to the perpetrators. They tell you, please, we are giving you 6 months to declare all your assets owned in foreign jurisdictions, and then we shall not put any penalties. Kenya has done it, and Nigeria, Norway, they have tried to do that. Some people have that amnesty, carrot and stick, you tell me, all the rich people.
I think the speaker also does that, or maybe it's different.
Yeah, we have done it at the domestic level. We have amnesty in the domestic laws for people to declare their tax liabilities, and then they can be waived off penalties and interests.
Yes.
But now at a foreign level, like rich people who are owning wealth offshore outside our country.
Yes.
They can be told.
They can be tracked.
You can be easily tracked. What you do when you give them that amnesty and they declare, that's the beginning of starting to track the way they operate. Others have tried what we call lifestyle audits. I mean, it's people who show off and they are lavish.
That's the kind of audit that was performed.
Yeah. Uganda was, it was being suggested by the IGG, and then there was a confusion whether we should track these guys. There was an idea that since the money is not being taken out and is only here, it is benefiting Ugandans. But the same people most likely who are bringing it here are also having havens across board. You cannot tell that they are only having it here. You get? So the exchange of information, 1, 2, collaboration in enforcing of laws, but also making sure that you have some incentive for those guys. You may offer them amnesty and tell them for the next 6 months we would like you to declare your wealth across board. And then if you don't declare, we shall go ahead to look for you. You know, it may sound a threat, but some people will respond. So that can be another approach I thought we could. And maybe another step that I've seen in Uganda has been the idea of renegotiating the taxation agreements. You know, there's this whole idea that tax planning is not a part of illicit financial flows. But recent revelations have shown that aggressive tax planning has a thin line with tax evasion. Tax evasion is an illicit financial flow. So much of the concentration in tax regimes and revising tax laws has been targeting addressing aggressive tax planning. Let everyone pay what they are supposed to pay. And in the world where there is no political interference, if those laws are followed to the dot, then you will minimize the volume of illicit financial flows.
Thank you so much. So I think the next conversation we should have together, we should begin from the double tax agreements. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and expertise, and thank you for having joined us on Business Today. Luckily, that was a conversation that was going to wrap up this show, Business Today. If you just joined us, you've just missed a lot, but you shouldn't miss what we have on Friday. We also have a show prepared, and I think we should be having an expert in check or in waiting to help us digest some of these interesting business insights and trends that you really need to talk about. I can assure you next Friday we're going to talk about, analyze the Israel and Palestine war, even though there is a lot of media contradiction on what information and what is perceived, but we should definitely be bringing you that. Thank you so much for having joined us. As always, I'm Rana Habwe. Good evening.